Oh, Foxy, it's your birthday. Not for real, just for play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of THIStory, which is the podcast dedicated to telling you stories, tales, and bits of history that you're not going to get in your education. And since our audience is most likely American, we know you're not learning anything in school. So we want to share just the bits and pieces of the history that is actively trying to be erased right now by certain factions. And so, but with a little funny twist. And normally it's just me and James out here talking about whatever. But today we have a very special guest who you see right below me. Her name is Shalene Dudley. And I brought her in because she is a world traveler. And I want her to, she joins us to speak about her experiences, her business, her early childhood, etc. And to kind of mix things in. A lot of times we just talk about what it means to be like, Black in America, but that ain't her. But even though she's been here, so, everybody doesn't have a chance to compare. So she's got real life comparisons. So Shalene, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Hi, my name is Shalene. Thanks for letting me be here. I currently live in Oakville, Ontario, which is, I guess for ease, in between Niagara Falls and Toronto. So I've been here for the last 11 years with my kids. I grew up in Canada, but I was born in England. And my family is primarily in the UK, like the majority of my family, but my immediate family is here in Ontario. I went to school in the States. I went to Michigan State, go green. And then I moved to Florida and lived there for a few years. And now I am back here in Canada.
Right. And so if I remember correctly, your father is from Ghana and your mother's from Jamaica, right?
Yes.
How did that happen? That ain't close. So how did that happen? That's a lot of letters.
Everything leads to colonialism. They both grew up in their birth countries, but oddly enough, and I just kind of made this correlation with myself, at the age of around 7 for each of them, they moved or migrated to England. So my father's mother, we found all of her documents thanks to one of my line sisters, and she moved her family based on paperwork that says she was an ice cream proprietress, was able to move her 4 kids to England. She then went to nursing school and put herself through nursing school while she had 4 kids, and then started a few more businesses. Unfortunately, I say all this was and she, because she passed away in 1976. And my parents were married in 1977. And I was born in 1978. My dad's a mechanical engineer. So he took the opportunity to move and immigrate to Canada with my mom because my aunt had already moved to London, Ontario with her family. And so he came to find work as an engineer. So that's how I got to Canada. So I wasn't even in England longer than a year. My little citizenship card had me with 2 little Afro puffs, looking bewildered, like, what are we doing? We moved to Winnipeg, though. So we did not move to Ontario. We we stayed with them at first in London, and we moved to Winnipeg, Ontario, which we lovingly call Winterpeg. It's north of Fargo. So you can imagine.
That's cold.
It's cold. Yes. I don't remember how cold it was. But when I was 7, which is what I thought was funny, and I didn't realize that till just recently, my family moved to Ontario. So then we moved a province to the west. And when I was 7, we all believed that Ontario had no mosquitoes, that Ontario had, it's crazy because if you've ever been in like the prairies of any state, it's like mosquitoes are this big and it's either blazing hot or freezing cold. So Ontario was like utopia. Like we didn't think there were mosquitoes for years because we were used to this. And then it's like a regular thing. Like, oh, it rains here. There's spring. Like there was like 4 seasons. It was really cool. Like you could watch the snow gradually happen as opposed to Winnipeg. It was like, wake up, 8 feet of snow. No one can move. You have to plug your car into the house, which is funny because we do that now, right? The electric cars.
I was like, what do you mean plug your car into the house?
Literally, it gets that cold that in some of like the northern states and some of the prairies, it drops so low that you can't start your car if it wasn't like charged. Not charged, but just kept
running.
Kept on AC,
somehow.
alternating current.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So if you didn't, I
Wow.
remember there were days when I was little that my dad was home because he forgot to plug it in, or days he would come home. I think once he had severe frostbite, I remember we thought he was going to lose his toe. It used to get that cold. Yeah. So we left that horrid place. My brother was born there and we moved to Mississauga, which is a little further east going towards Toronto. And that's where I lived for most of my life before I left.
Okay. And that's when I met you, was when, well, you were living in Florida when I met you because surprise, shocker, she used to be one of my roommates. When I lived.
How many people on this podcast have been your roommate?
You're the, well, actually 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Join houses and nurses deltas back to help, then send
Right.
them out like little birds.
I used to run a halfway house for like homeless deltas, and there's like you and Gelda and what was your other friend's name that came down?
Anita.
I don't know why I wanted to call her Sarah. I was like, Sarah's, I don't know anybody named Sarah. I don't know where they came from. This is menopause brain. Just made up Sarah. But yeah, all of y'all, you know, did your time in my halfway house.
Yeah, in both. Remember, you had the condo. I was
That's
there.
right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
so
my story, sort of.
We go way back. Remember Gray Ghost, the truck?
I found the keychain. I should take a picture. I still have the beat up Space Ghost keychain.
Wow.
From my truck. I had oh my God, what was that? A Tacoma? It was
I
like
think it was a Toyota Tacoma.
It was a Tacoma, but we called it Space Ghost. Joy taught me how to drive.
So for all of you other women out there that like shun or worry about being called auntie, I embrace that with my whole heart. Because like Shalene is maybe 5-6 years younger than me. Like, what are you, like 42? How old are you?
No, oh girl, I'm 46.
46. Okay, so yeah, you're 5 years younger than me. And I took her under my little wing, you know, gave her a place to stay, crust of bread, and you know, something to eat. But at one point, you know, the economy being what it was, she needed a vehicle. And me balling out on my Kimberly Clark salary, I was like, I got you. So, but I couldn't afford nothing. Like, great. So we went shopping around and found this serviceable Toyota Tacoma.
Listen, that thing moved people back and forth. It was more than serviceable. The only reason why Space Ghost is no longer with us is because of the treacherous rain taking the Skyway in St. Pete. That's it. Someone crashed into me. That thing had done wonders for many Omega or Delta that needed to be moved.
Yes. It was a trusty old truck, but it was a stick shift. And so I taught her how to drive a stick on the car I got on the truck I bought for her. And it just happened to have a Space Ghost keychain. And so that was the name, Space Ghost.
Space Ghost. Okay.
Yeah, you don't know Space Ghost? Okay, we'll talk about that then.
Oh, he knows. Trust me, he knows.
Okay. Yeah, Space Ghost, coast to coast.
There are very few cartoon characters I don't know.
Okay,
you know what? He might be one of the only other people. Like we used to watch
what, Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and we could and C Lab 2021.
Not 2020, 2021.
C Lab was the worst.
It was the absolute worst
because it was the best.
And we will still quote it to each other. I will call, just leave her a voice message. Bizarro, and nobody else.
I love you. Bizarro.
Yeah. But we're going to get back to what we're supposed to be talking about, which is history. So,
yes, Mark, we did survive MomoCon.
Oh yeah, I was laughing at that. That looked fun.
It was so. Look, I got my shirt on right now from MomoCon. Yeah, it was great. Very much loved it. But we do need to get back to what we're supposed to be talking about, which is history. So today I want to talk Hawaiian history because this is the Moana Nui podcast. And after all, and the CEO, founder, proprietor, etc., they're Hawaiian natives. And when I went to Hawaii a little while ago, a couple of years ago at this point, we just randomly happened to take one of those catamaran rides, right? And what I was really digging, like as I'm avoiding the touristy stuff for the most part, and I'm trying to pick up the local flavor and local people and everything, discovering that they have a ridiculous affection and love for reggae music and Bob Marley in particular, that they eat like we eat. They are more in love with Spam than I was when I was little. And they also don't like colonizers because they're probably as far as the United States is concerned, they were the last colonized nation because they were a sovereign nation. And we just came in there like, yeah, all your base all belong to us right now. And but before all of that, when the first explorers first came to the Big Island, it was Captain, I want to say his name was John Cook.
James Cook.
James Cook.
James John.
Yeah, whatever. We don't care about his name. Can't pronounce it anyway, the weird letters. But James Cook came down. He came down to the Big Island, and when he was on his way down there, they the Native Hawaiians, the chief of the tribe in the area where his boat landed, they were celebrating one of their gods at the time.
That Kamehameha?
Yes, I think it may have been.
I know some things.
I think you're right. So wait, now I got to look it up. Make sure I'm not telling lies.
I might be.
Oh Lord.
Captain James.
While she's looking that up, when he did first arrive, he named the chain of islands the Sandwich Islands, after featuring the Earl of Sandwich. So I'm still trying to understand like why the Earl of Sandwich is even a thing in England. Like
why
Sandwich was an area like Greenwich.
But Sandwich.
Hey.
So the Sandwich is named after the Earl of Sandwich.
It wasn't the other way around.
Right. We call that meal a sandwich because of him.
Oh gosh.
His craven self created a sandwich.
Yes.
Regardless of order, it just all sounds stupid.
Well, that's because of how we use the word now.
English.
But yeah. I mean, it'd be like, you know, trying to think of something else that's named after a place.
Hamburg.
Yep. And hamburgers.
That's a good one. Yep.
Chihuahuas after the area.
Is there an area called Dorito?
Chihuahua is the city. And the dogs are first spotted there.
Okay. All right.
So Captain Cook, yes. Captain James Cook landed in Hawaii, January 1778, making him the first known European to explore the islands. In typical Western fashion, he decided he should name his discovery, anointing them the Sandwich Islands in honor of his patron, the Earl of Sandwich. Okay. I never before met with the natives of any place so much astonished as these people were upon entering a ship, meaning they had never been on a boat that big before. But now here's what was going on the other side. Right. Matter of fact, the king, Kalani Opu. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was when Cook first arrived, they were celebrating a seasonal passage. But part of that seasonal celebration of their local gods was that the god would come back on a brown vessel with white clouds, etc., and bless them with presents, etc., etc. So when Captain James Cook shows up in a wooden ship with sails, they're like, "It's our god! Yay! Welcome back! Thank you." And
so opposite.
And so they were so excited to see him. They treated him really well, which is the downfall of every native population, is being nice to these damn colonials. So they treated him really well. They fed everybody. They were nice, bathed them, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Hey, you want to help me fix my boat up a little bit?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure. We got you." So where's our presents? Because that's the tradition says the God's going to come back and bring us stuff. So where's our stuff? He's giving them like hammer, some nails, I don't know, chicken bones, whatever he had that he thought they didn't have, and they were like, "Thank you, I guess." I don't know what this is. So even they were like the little kid on the internet. I don't know about this.
Side-eye.
And so they were like,
Side-eye.
whatever, this isn't what we expected. But I mean, I guess you're a god since you showed up in the right vessel. So, here, have some food. Now, one thing that we have learned about Europeans over the course of history is that they lack basic hygiene knowledge. And these were no different. So some of their crew had died on the way down there, as things happen on a ship, being on a ship that long. And instead of just throwing them overboard in the ocean,
Nope.
they threw him in a local wet reservoir, and they poisoned the water on the island.
Did they also gift the blankets they had them in? Because they like to do that too.
Yeah, they did that to the natives in Eastern and North America. Yeah. But no, they threw a body in the water, and the watering hole, and poisoned the well, basically. That everybody got their water, so everybody got sick. Now it was a curable illness, so they recovered, but they got sick. And as Captain Cook's people are leaving the first time, they were like, this is some bull. Like, I feel like maybe he wasn't a god. Like, I feel like we got hoodwinked. I don't like that. Like, they just, something ain't right. So Cook leaves, and because he can't navigate, he sailed right into the cross currents that and wrecked his boat. He can't get back. He can't get back to Great Britain. So he's like, you know what? Let's turn around and limp back to that place we were, because they think I'm a god. And by the time we get back, they'll be glad to see us, and they'll fix the boat up again. So he goes back. But mind you, this is old 1700s seafaring time. It took him a month to get back, right?
Wow.
And by the time he got back, they've been done celebrating the old gods. And now it's they're looking to their spiritual advisors, their shamans, whatever you want to call them, and they are preparing for war because the shamans have told them a great war is coming. I might be getting this off a little bit, but the king, see, this is how you know patriarchy wasn't everywhere. The king said that his wife had a dream, and the dream told him, and because of her dream, she told him, do not leave this island. Don't let anybody take you off this island. And he listened to his wife. You hear that, men? Out here in the 2025s, in 1778, a man was listening to his wife, and it saved his life.
Where'd you go, James? James, come back.
I listen.
And so when Captain Cook and his people show back up, and they're like, hey, we're your gods, fix our boat. They're like, So we remember what you did last time with the water and how you really just gave us like nails and dirt and stuff for presents. So no, beat it. And he's like, I'm your god. And they had already decided. So this is the duplicity of the invading species. They had already decided that if they didn't fix the boat, they were going to kidnap the king and put him on the boat and take him back and ransom him off basically for labor. And so when they were like, king, come with us, the king was like, nah, my wife said, nah. Said,
I can't go out today.
Right. She had a dream, and I'm gonna rock with her. And so they ended up fighting. And they also discovered, the Englishmen discovered that they couldn't fight. And so they got their tails kicked, and they tried to swim back to the boat because they were getting whooped on land. And then Captain Cook remembered that he could not swim. How you the captain of a ship and you can't swim? Important point. Right. What were you gonna do? What was your exit plan? What was your plan for what how Sway?
Fast forward 200 years. If you join the U.S. Navy, you have to know how to swim. you cannot be in the Navy and not know how to swim.
At least they learned from their mistakes. So he drowns. Wait a minute, what? How come I don't know this part of the story? So they bring his body back. And because they have good hygiene practices, they burn the body. Yeah, that's what you do. Ew. You burn the body, right? And so the people, everybody else made it back to the ship. And now the other people on the ship are like, they came, in their little dingy rowboat, like, yo, can we, we're going to leave because this was clearly wrong. Can we have the body of our captain back? And they're like,
what body?
Here's fertilizer bones. Like, we burned the body. Here's some finger bones and some leg bones. This is all we got. You had that. So they took it, went back to Great Britain, went back to England, and said, look at what these savages have done to Captain Cook. They ate him. Oh, they turned them into cannibals and said they ate him.
There's that story.
Completely skipped the whole, he couldn't navigate worth a doggone, and came back and drowned because he didn't know how to swim because he was stupid. Also didn't know how to fight, is how he ended up getting whooped by a bunch of natives. All of these things, they were like, no, they're savages and cannibals. And they ate Captain Cook. These are his bones. Anybody, well, they didn't have forensics back then, but anybody should have been able to see that those bones were cooked. Then again, maybe they thought they cooked and ate them, but yeah. So
what story is better?
Right? What story is going to get them to finance another expedition down to Hawaii?
Mm-hmm.
And so they came back with an army and blah, blah, blah. And thus began the multiple different occupations of Hawaii, all because Captain Cook didn't know how to swim.
Mm.
Yeah. So the guy telling us this, mind you, I'm on a catamaran in Hawaii at the time when I'm hearing the story for the first time. And as he's telling it, it's me, my friend Dara, her cousin Olu, and his boyfriend, whose name I am blanking on right now. It's in my phone, and I'm so anyway. And his boyfriend, we're all together, and we're the only black people, only people of color on this catamaran, us and the crew. And so this guy is telling the story. So as he's telling the story, and so he's like, now, Captain Cook gets here, and his boat is broken down. What do you think he's going to try to do to the natives? And we're like, exploit them. He's like, yes, exploit them. That's exactly what he's going to try to do. And they threw the body in the well. Why do you think they did that? Bad hygiene. Yes. Bad hygiene. So we're cutting up, and the white folks had paid for this trip. Or like,
I would like a refund. I'm not comfortable.
Right. I'm uncomfortable with this story because it doesn't put me in a good light. A couple of them were cool. A couple of them were cracking up laughing. But the rest of them were like, this isn't what I paid for. I'm sure they gave bad reviews, but nobody cares. Nobody cares about your bad reviews.
And then hours of discomfort compared to the hundreds of years for them and pretty much all our Black lives.
We don't want to hear about that, unfortunately.
We don't want to hear about that.
That's not who we are now.
Right. But that it is who you are now.
Yeah.
You out here throwing trash off the side of the boat. That matter of fact, they already said, please, the water's pristine. We got coral, we got everything. Please don't throw anything off the boat. And somebody finished a bottle of water and then just like set it on the side of the boat and then kind of tipped it over. And they stopped the boat, jumped off, jumped in, got the bottle, brought it back up and gave it to the guy. Don't throw things off the boat. Like he saw him do it. I was like, you know what? Bravo. Don't let you get away with it. And then he was all ashamed. And then, of course, because he was all ashamed, he tried to be all big and bad and like, be a jerk to everybody.
Captain Cook.
Can't you just admit you was wrong? Because you knew you was wrong when you set it there and watched it tip over the side. There's a trash can 2 feet away from you. No respect. Bad height. I bet he don't wash his legs neither.
Zero accountability.
No. Just wash their hair and let it run down. That's what I heard.
I've heard that as well.
Yes, they do that. Yes, some of them do that.
Well, the bubbles roll down my legs. So.
Bubbles scrubbing bubbles is a lie. It's a whole lie.
The bubbles run down my legs, so that is enough.
So I'm gonna take a moment here because I'm baking a cheesecake for a friend and I need to get it out of the oven. And so James, and look, time is what it is. I ran out of time, but anyway, I'm James. So Shalene shared with us her diasporic background, father from Ghana, mother from Jamaica, born in England, lived in Canada, came to the US, blah, blah, blah. You have Belize in your blood. Am I right?
Yeah. So my maternal grandfather, my mother's father, is from Belize and actually came over here twice. So the first time he was very young, he was playing hide and seek with his cousins. And because my grandmother told me this story one afternoon, I was probably like high school age. So something between 14, 18, she told the story. We're just sitting around. She was like, yeah, the first time your grandfather came over here was because he was playing hide and seek and he hid on a boat.
Oh no!
No one knew he was there until the boat docked stateside.
No.
So naturally, when they realized, huh?
How long is that journey?
Don't ask me to lie.
Thank God that boy was alive.
Wow. But they discovered him, I think, not necessarily when the boat docked, but they discovered him mid-trip, and it wasn't like they want to turn around and go back, because I think they were transporting cargo. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so once they made it to America, they they pretty much was like, yeah, the next ride back, we take him with us and make sure he gets back to his home country.
Wow.
And they brought him back. I'm not sure what the family that was still in still in Belize, like,
what were they thinking
through or whatnot, because it didn't have that side of the story. My grandfather wasn't home at the time. But yeah, that was the first time. He was like, I think my grandmother said he's probably like 8-10 years old when this happened.
God, I have a 10-year-old. I can't imagine.
So no. That was the first time. And then the second time, of course, is when he came to the country to actually settle down, live, whatnot. And yeah, and let's just put it this way. Because my mom is one of 6. There are 3 boys, 3 girls. She is the middle daughter, 4th oldest. Okay. 4th as far as like birth order. So yeah, when I go home for the holidays, when I do make it up there, when any number of my mom and my aunts and uncles get together, doesn't matter if it's 2 of them, 3, 4, 5, whatever, any number of them get together and start talking about their childhood, it is utter chaos. Wow. Because it's always, you did this is why we got a whooping. No, you did this is why we got a whooping. So everybody's snitching on each other. Now, both my grandparents on that side, all my grandparents have long since passed away or whatnot, but just them going back and forth over, well, you didn't sneak out the house, then the boys wouldn't have got a whooping. And if you didn't do this, then the girls wouldn't have gotten a whooping. And like, I'm just up there like this, like, this is great. This is awesome stuff. Like, because the attention's not on me and anything crazy I've done recently.
Who could top being on a boat, though?
Right?
Who wins that?
Right? He straight up getting his eye. He went on a 3-hour tour.
Right. Remember that one time?
So yeah, that's the story of how my grandfather ended up here the first time.
Twice landed.
So, but I will say that, like, so Belize is in Central America. There's a Latin, Latin, indigenous, and I'm trying to remember which of those European countries, don't get me lying, I know it was a number of them that pretty much hit that area from, trying to find America, if you will, and all of them missing. Why we celebrate Columbus Day, I have no idea. Dude never made it up there. He did end up on Belize, though. Columbus did land on Belize a few times. So, but yeah, tempers, when people say that island temper, that Caribbean, Central American temper or whatever, yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little. I just found out in the last 5 years that my mother's father is actually part Cuban as well.
That's interesting discussion, because when we think about especially the Latin American diaspora, and you can or cannot throw the Caribbean in there. It's a little bit different, but not. I think more Caribbeans recognize and honor their African heritage than you might get in some parts of the Latin American diaspora. But it's a whole lot more brown-skinned Cubans, Panamanians, Brazilians, etc. out there that we don't think about, because we don't know it when we see it, especially in the States. In the United States, you are Black, white, Asian, or Mexican. Those are only flavors. They don't even count Native Americans anymore. That's like over there, because that's how we treat them. We stole their land and we put them in corners and promptly forgot about them and refused to respect them the way they need to be respected. And then Yes.
There are those crazy white people who claim to be 1/16 or 1/32 Cherokee.
Yeah, so they can get a card and get a discount somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
which is always a lie, because genealogy test shows no indigenous blood in your background whatsoever.
Right. That lie your grandmother told you? Nah. But you know what? There's a lot of black people like that too. Like, I got Indian in my family because of these cheekbones. No, this is white people. This is white people right here. I did my 23andMe. I am 82% West African. Surprisingly, given my skin tone, 82% West African, 1% Pacific Islander, 0.5% Native American, and 2% Finnish, particularly, and then the rest is like European and Southern Europe.
My father found some Italian in his.
Wow.
He's West African.
Yeah.
He had a whole other bunch of breakdowns, but that was the one that was the biggest, and we were like, really?
That usually speaks to somebody, sneaking in the woodshed or what have you. Like, I feel like the 2% Finnish I got, that's clearly a ship captain,
Ship captain. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I haven't done a genealogy, but I do remember growing up, my father's father showing me a picture of his grandfather in full Native American garb. So I do know that on at least my father's side of the family, don't ask me what tribe. I don't remember. I was shown this photo when I was like 6.
Wow.
But I clearly remember the photo of a man standing full traditional, garb with headdress down to his waist. So
you need
it's
to
an image
find
I
that.
can't get out of my head. I wish I knew where that photo album was.
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, my grandfather passed away. A lot of the things in his house, I don't know where they went or who got what and when. So
that's the sad part about losing like elders in your family, is like, it wasn't until recently, like in the last 20, 30 years, that we started realizing how much we were losing when somebody died, and they took all their stories with them, took a knowledge of who, what, when, where with them. A whole lot went on in a whole lot of places between, let's call it 1850 and 1950, that we don't have trace to or track. We can't keep track of it, because the person that knew about it a lot of times didn't want to talk about it because it was painful, and they just wanted to live their life peacefully and move on.
There's also written history that's just disappeared, right? Like my mom, when my line sister did my family lineage, we found the birth registries for my mother's side in Jamaica, and they were only completed because of the Jesuits, from what I remember. So the Jesuits came to the island and were helping, for some reason, who knows what reason it was. I'm still going to put them in the colonizer column, but
yes,
they were there helping register new births. So without that, there was, I guess, maybe nothing in place before that was kept in a central record, likely. But that's what we found for my mother and her siblings and cousins that were actually cousins. Her siblings were all born in England. So that was all they had. And it only existed because that faction kept that information. So, what else was there, or what was doctored? You don't even know how true any of those documents are.
Yeah, my dad has 2 birth certificates with 2 different names on them, and they're 3 days apart.
I have aunts who don't really know how old they are. They're in their 80s. Like, I don't know really how old I am, because your grandmother had to say I was this old to migrate.
Yeah.
So this is the age I was given, and now I don't remember if I'm 2 years older or younger.
Wow.
I'm just old. Leave me alone. Still here.
As an adult, you kind of, and with you having kids, Shalene, you understand this. When you're 14 or whatever, say you're 12 because of how short you are. When you're going to the restaurant.
How old are they? I'm like,
you're going to Golden Corral. You are 10 years old today. So
right.
Meal.
Then you got to have that one who's like, I am not. I am. No. Do you want free popcorn or not? Quiet.
Right.
I would just nod my head.
My mom lied and told the school system. It's weird because my mom was smart enough when she was going up through high school that she got jumped up until she graduated high school at 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
Or was it 16? Maybe No, 14. She was 14 when she graduated high school. And of course, then it meant that she ended up going to college, and she was kind of too immature to be in college. But she's still super smart. But so the comic tragic story for that is she's 15 years old. She's a freshman at Texas Southern University. Some of her friends are smoking cigarettes because that's what you did when you was being bad, smoke cigarettes. She was doing hood rat things with her hood rat friends freshman year. And she came home and told my grandfather that she was going to drop out of school because some of her other friends were dropping out to do whatever. And he's like, all right, fine. And the next day he gave her a want ads paper. He's like, find you a job then. And she's like, what is this? Everybody in this house either has to go to school or go to work. When I leave the house, everybody else is gone from the house. And so she went back to school because she didn't want to work. Ugh.
She wasn't old enough to work anyway.
Exactly. She was 15. She probably could have. And
I'm about to say, what era is this? Like, we talking?
That would have been in the 50s.
Oh, no, she could have worked.
She was old enough
to work. There was no child labor laws.
Never mind.
Right.
You're
right.
an adult.
And so then the next thing is she wanted to pledge Delta at Texas Southern. And had she gone through with it, her big sister would have been Barbara Jordan.
Wow.
Whoa.
However, she's 16 years old with an attitude. And
Okay.
so she was in the process. And as my mother tells it, they were trying to make her do something she didn't want to do. And she's like, you keep your little funky pen, and threw it at them and walked out and dropped lines. So my mom was what we call an internal pyramid. Yeah. And I could have had a relationship with Barbara Jordan if she hadn't acted a whole fool while she was online.
And that's why you must be 18 years old to play.
Right?
You have a little bit more sense.
A little bit more sense.
Just a little, though. Not a lot.
Hopefully you have a little bit more.
Yes.
Just a little.
Hopefully.
Hot mess. But like it's stories like that. And I remember, and this is something, so whoever's listening out there, this is a great project to do with your kids, is have them take a recorder. They can record on their phone or whatever. I had to do it on a little, Fisher Price push 2 buttons to hit record cassette player, and have them just listen to their grandparents' stories of how they grew up. Because I remember listening to my grandfather. We had to do it for like an elementary school assignment. And he talked about being married with a baby during the Depression, because he was born in 1913 and my grandmother was born in 1915. So in 1929, 15, 25 is 10 years. Okay, so maybe the late 30s. The Depression is still going on, and especially for Black people, it ain't no better. They got married when they were 17 and 17 and 19 years old, because she got pregnant. Because I come from a long line of hoochies, apparently, and we like to get it in. So there's that. And she got pregnant. They came from Palestine, Texas, which is out in the woods, Huntsville, Texas, down to Houston to get a better job. And my grandfather was working as a caddy on a golf course, making I think 25 cents a day. Wow. 25 cents a day, right? And with that, and then a couple other odd jobs that they had to get enough to live. So my grandmother would take and watch it. So when I see that movie, The Help, it reminds me of my grandmother, because that's what she was doing. She was going around cleaning people's houses and whatnot. And that's all the work you could get in the 40s as a Black woman, right? My grandfather went off. I think he enlisted for a while. So there was that. But then he could swim. This is before the whole public swimming pool thing. A lot of Black people could swim before they stopped allowing people in the cities to be in the swimming pools. Like once we integrated and they filled all the pools, Black people who had gotten a little more affluent, that didn't live by a creek or an ocean, didn't have anywhere to teach their kids how to swim. So this myth that Black people can't swim was very short-lived, But anyway, my grandfather could swim. And so he was making 25 cents a day on the golf course, but he was making a penny a ball to go diving for golf balls, because people didn't want to, get their wet, or they could get a handicap or whatever they were doing. So he's making a penny a ball. He's pulling out 30, 40 golf balls a day. He's doubling what he's making at the golf course just by diving for balls. And he don't mind being wet all day. It's Houston. It's hot anyway. So there's that. And he talked about my grandmother taking in washing and doing that kind of stuff. And they had a tenant that stayed in another room. So they would take rent from him, and all of this was under the table. But if you didn't do things under the table, you couldn't make ends meet. So stories like that, it's burned in my brain because I heard it when I was 7 or 8 years old, and it was fascinating to me. And I think having something like that and talking to your children or your grandchildren about what it was like for you growing up, even me with no kids, I talked to other people's nieces, nephews, other people's children, whatever, about, Spam sandwiches and government cheese and early Nintendo and things like that. Like, it doesn't have to all be struggle, Atari 2600, downloading a song off Napster, getting 5 viruses, and it taking 3 hours to get that one song. And at the end of the week, you could burn a CD.
And then you got sent that notice that you were in a court case and they were coming for you.
Yes. I remember where everybody was going to court. We was all going to jail.
Coming for us.
That was the biggest scam of all time. They convinced all of us that we were going to go to jail if we kept using Napster, and then everybody started actually buying music on Amazon or whatever.
I deleted so many songs.
I just moved them from. I've got a flash drive with 1,700 songs on it. Because I'm you know how long it took me to burn this one copy of Giddy Girl?
You would go to class and come back and the thing is still.
Yes. I remember being on Napster and find the version that you like and then hit download. And as soon as you got the thing to say downloading in the little spot, yes, go to bed.
Yep.
Because it's going to be doing it all night. You wake up in the morning. Oh, when you woke up in the morning, it had failed sometime during the night. Or God forbid somebody called the house, mess everything up. These are stories that kids need. If you really want to understand why early millennials and Gen X are so protective of their music, we worked hard to get it, right? Either you had to catch the train to go somewhere, to go to, Wax and Facts or whatever, to get an actual album. And I miss album covers with the words and the lyrics inside. Now you just download some digital thing on Amazon and go to G Monkey or whatever it is and look up the lyrics. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best jacket covers ever was De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, because it had all the little cartoons and all the lyrics in there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But from a history standpoint, because I keep needing to bring myself back to what we're supposed to be talking about, this is history. Everything doesn't have to be a monumental, free the slaves type of moment. Sometimes it's just remembering what the culture was like when you were young. My grandfather was heavy into jazz. And when I told him I was taking an appreciation of jazz class at Spelman, he went into the garage and pulled out a record player and all this stuff. And basically everything that my jazz, history of jazz teacher was talking about, he had the original records. I don't know where those records are now, because this was 40 years or 30 years ago. But it's just awesome. I have a duffel bag full of vinyl from my dad from when he passed away. That's Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes type of stuff.
Nice.
It's that you mentioned talking to your parents or your grandparents about those stories. So I remember, and I only remember this because Jacob just had this project where they're like, let's talk about your family tree, which I think every kid has ever had that project. Yeah. And so he was asking me stuff and I was trying to remember what I knew. And then I realized, you know what? Anytime I had this project, my mom said, those people at your school are nosy. And I never got any additional info because that was how my parents or maybe not my dad, but my mom was like, why do they need to know all of that? And you know what? Honestly, for about 2 seconds when he told me what he needed to do, I was like, why do they need to know all that? Those people, they're not nosy. Okay, let's get this done. It's out of the sense of, at least now, I don't know about when I was little. It's probably really a little bit about me, nosy, but now it is a lot of, the schools are so multicultural, really where is everybody from? And they put it on a map and they did this whole scatter thing to show people were from all over the place. But it was interesting for him because first he was just like, oh, it's another project. But then when I was telling him more and more the stories that I didn't learn from my parents, but that I learned again from my friend doing the research, he was like, oh, so he added all these extra slides and pictures. And you can tell as a 10-year-old, that was interesting for him to know more than just that's my grandfather, that's my grandmother. I think we take for granted that kids do want to know this information. They may start off like, why are you telling me another story? But it really did touch him. And I could see it because he put so much pride in the project and did his whole tree. And then I had to go find out other names of other people so he could make a bigger tree. Like, he was really proud of that. I think we have to take more time to make sure we retell those stories while we can. I've seen apps in the last few years, most of them on Facebook, where it's like you can get these notebooks so you can ask your family member the questions that you wouldn't think to ask, to fill out so that you have it while they're still here. And I keep seeing that. I keep thinking I need to do that with my dad and my mom. And just, what do you remember other than the things that you told me when you were mad, thinking, my time, I didn't. Blah, blah, blah. Like I do now. I'm like, how dare you not pause the TV when I tell you to go clean up the dishes? I didn't have a pause button and I had to run when there were commercial breaks. And I didn't get to record that show because my brother wanted to watch one and I did. We had to flip between shows and hope we caught them at commercials, not miss things. And To Be Continued was like the worst thing you've ever saw in your life. Like, what do you mean? Not our shows didn't go in sequential order.
if you missed something on like Different World or whatever, you had to wait for it to come back in reruns.
And so kids like to hear these things. First, they're like, I don't want to, but it's good to like tell them how things have changed. And then us to remember it wasn't that long ago, but really it was.
It was.
Yeah. 30 years ago was not 1970. 30 years ago was 1995.
That hurts every time they do one of those things like, this song is 40 years old. I'm like, no.
Right.
And it makes me hate children all over again.
Yeah.
Right. When they were like 30th anniversary of Southern Playalistic Cadillac, like, what? Outkast has been out for 30 years?
No.
And somebody's like, well, yeah, Beyonce been out for 20. What? Beyonce been out for 20 years?
What? How old?
Your favorite Eminem song is 20 years old. I did not ask you for this information.
Remind me of that.
And those Instagram reels where they put like, they dig it in and because they show you 40 songs that are that off.
Right.
Here, 40 songs that are 40 years old.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. Oh, the worst is when you're in like, you know, a grocery store or department store or something, and they start playing like a Muzak version of a song you used to dance to in the club, you know.
In my yoga class or my Pilates class, they play a Muzak version of Hey Ya.
Ew.
And I get mad every time.
Gross. You should get mad. Andre 3000 would be so offended with that.
No, he wouldn't. He plays the flute. What are you talking about?
But he doesn't play the flute for that song.
It sounded like there would be a flute in the background.
I'm grocery shopping earlier today, and they played Joanna by Kool and the Gang. Yes, I was singing down the aisles.
Like the actual Joanna?
Wow. Whack, 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 nah.
I'm like,
wow.
Joanna.
That's a good one. I like when I go to Starbucks and it's like, they know, right? They've got like some kind of mixologist somewhere that knows like, okay, the crowd is this crowd. So guess what we're going to play? 80s R&B.
Yup.
Who's in the back? Whose Spotify is this? Give me another chai. I'm staying another hour.
Right? It's a party up in here. Girl, I saw a video of them doing like a line dance or something up in Publix in Atlanta because it's Atlanta and Atlanta is the blackest place you ever seen in your life.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, I love living here. But, the last topic I want to talk about, and then we'll round it all up, is so actually something that you just mentioned, like when you talked about kids wanting to know and maybe kind of, you know, pretending that they don't, but still being fascinated, being interested. There's the other side of it is, especially for some of the older generations older than me, they didn't want to talk about it because it was still painful to think about. Like nobody wants to talk about Seneca Village or Tulsa or Rosewood because that's really freaking painful. In addition to that, a lot of just survival of specifically Black people, but to a similar extent, Asian, Native American, Latin American people in this country was struggling until the mid 80s. You know, like my generation, I was born in 74. And so by the time I am in first grade, it's the 80s. Right. And I'm the first generation to really have an integrated school. They talked about it before that. They mentioned it. It was kind of a good idea, but generally most schools are still segregated up until like 1982, 83, somewhere in there. And so before that, anybody born in the 60s remembers going to an all something school.
Right.
You know? And people don't want to talk about that time. And so then there's the dilemma of, I know this meme is going around saying you don't want to teach Black history in schools because you don't want your grandkids to know you was throwing rocks at Ruby Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so
I think I watched that recently and I had to pause it to say those things to him. Also to remind him that his grandmother on his father's side was one of the first children to integrate to school in Tallahassee. So like this happened to someone you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. My dad helped integrate with, like, you know, they were doing the lunch counter sit-ins across the country to integrate. So Reverend Bill Lawson and my father and the Honorable Otis King, my father's name was Charles Stevens, and several other people figured out how to sneak this into Houston. They weren't going to do the whole sit-in. They weren't going to protest or whatever. They were just going to hit everybody with a fait accompli. So one day they just went in. They waited until like shift change or something. Like they caught people when they were unaware and just went into a diner and sat down. And they were like, "You can't sit here." And they were like, "Yeah, they integrated. You didn't see that the other day?" And white people believed them because they said it was, yeah, that happened like 2 weeks ago. We good, yeah. And they're like, "Oh, I guess that happened 2 weeks ago." And they integrated Houston.
Now, can I get a tuna milk? Thank you.
Mandela effect.
Yep. Yeah, just because you didn't see it don't mean it didn't happen. And they did that.
Proves that people are sheep, right? Like,
yeah,
the sheeple just did what the sheeple thought they had to do.
And when they were told, "You didn't do it anymore," then we fixed that. Oh,
yeah,
did we?
it's all gone.
Oh, I missed that. Oh, and the next thing you know, I was here yesterday, so now it's integrated. No bloodshed, no protest, no nothing. Just bait and switch, shake and bake,
smoke and mirrors.
But if you're out there listening, or if you're watching this on a repeat or whatever, talk to your children, or in some cases your grandchildren, or if you still have them, get your parents to talk to your children about the differences in culture, regardless of what your culture is. It could be Hawaiian, because as I was looking up this story of Captain Cook, so I could tell it, nothing I found had the Hawaiian version. It was all about Captain Cook naming them the Sandwich Islands, and then he died at sea. That's all they say. They don't say he tried to kidnap the king and drown because he didn't know how to swim, right?
I mean, the same can be said for what's that knucklehead's name? The European white boy in the Pocahontas story.
John Smith. That's why I was laughing. They
all these generic names.
Oh my God.
John Smith. John Smith is painted as the hero in almost every version of that story.
Yeah, and let Disney tell it the love interest, right?
Right. He was a John. He was an
girl
at this time.
Well, they didn't build her 12 in the animation, did they? She was
They sure did.
Amazon
like a grown
That's
woman.
what she looked like. Yep.
She was 12. Ew. Nasty.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that story is told from a different point of view. The James Cook story is told from a different point of view. The Alamo, you know, I grew up in Texas and was always remember the Alamo and the Alamo this, and there's an Alamo monument and blah, blah, blah. And it's a big part of Texas history. And they teach you Texas history in the 7th grade. And I always heard that the war of something, like it was very nebulous what the war was, but the last stand was at the Alamo and they held out. Now, the rest of the story is they still lost. That's the part they don't tell you, is that they held out, but then they still lost.
Remember
the
Alamo?
They were fighting for? You know what they were fighting for?
Last stand.
They were fighting to secede from Mexico because they wanted to maintain slavery. Mexico had abolished slavery. And Texas was like, we want to keep our slaves. And so similar to the Civil War, they fought a war over territory. They lost. And then in a whole different deal, parts of Texas moved to the United States after the Haitians kicked Napoleon's tail out of Haiti, and he depleted all of his monetary resources trying to fight a war on an island that he could not win. So he ended up needing money, and the United States had money. So the Louisiana Purchase was because Haiti was free. That people don't make that connection. and Texas came along, not so far, all that came with it, which wasn't theirs to sell, but, whatever,
I was going to mention this earlier and I forgot because we've been all over the place, but it all connects. So I know I forgot to say I own a travel agency, but I wanted to add that, I know a lot of people aren't traveling to the United States, and some people aren't leaving the United States for many reasons, passports, all kinds of things, real IDs. But the year before this, I went to a adventure trade show in Toronto, and there were representatives for like Louisiana and Texas and like all these just states that all had incorporated cultural tours about like the past that is not being taught in school, like how a state was formed, communities that were minimalized, as they used it in, nice terms. But we have people now going on trips outside of the world as well. We have people going to Paris, and we found them like an Afro Paris tour, which was like $60 to be walked around for like 6 hours and shown little parts of Paris that were historically Black and telling them when it happened and how it, progressed or became what it is. And there's whole neighborhoods that you wouldn't know on your regular, like Paris 7-day Eiffel Tower, Louvre, Versailles tour, right? So it's interesting to see so many countries. Like there's so many river cruises now going through like Cartagena, and you can now take like an Afro river cruise, which is not something you could ever think of like in the last 5 years. But some people are really trying to make sure culture is represented and that you can travel with a little bit of purpose and still have fun, right? Like it doesn't have to be a completely educational tour, but those things exist everywhere now. And so it's good if you can get your kids out and, just have a little bit of that in it. Cause they're not all boring. They're not all complete talking. Like you were on a catamaran. So like everybody loves a catamaran. You get on the catamaran, you get a history lesson while you're sitting on a coconut or whatever it is you're doing. But
whatever
there's always
alcohol
a way
shot we had.
to learn something. I was just in Curacao, and I don't usually like tours because I'm lazy. That's why I don't like them. I go away and I want to sleep. But it was a work trip. So the tours board took us on a half-day tour. And we saw like some scenic things and some caves, but they didn't get to take us there. But I'd always heard about the Afro Museum. Like there's a slave museum in Curacao. But when she described it in full detail, like it's probably the most intense. I saw some photos of it, like, whoa, this is more than I think you would see in North America. Like it's still the chains and like the space where people were held. And the island has really put money into it. And the Dutch have really put money into it to make sure that it's preserved. And the community there, which I didn't realize, on the, let's say, more rich side of the island, meaning like the pretty beaches and the bigger homes, that's where most of us are, and not the city side. Like they kind of almost did reparations, almost so close, gave them the good land. Like this is you over here. Now that shocked me because I can't think of another country. I'm sure there may be another one where that's happened, but I wouldn't have known any of that if I hadn't really tried to learn a little more about the island and been given the opportunity to do so. So it's all out there for us to learn. It's taking that little time out.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about these like Afro or African diaspora tours, because we forget that we are really, really not alone. We're only 12% of this country, but we're like 30% of the world.
Right.
Behind once they put the Indian population in with Asia, that like boosted their numbers, but so you have Asian, African, and then European. They're bringing up a distant rear, but then there's Black people or people from Africa that have migrated over centuries. You think about the Moors going into Spain. You think about the migration, even though there was slave migrations from East Africa into the Middle East and India, which is where you get some of that brown skin color, but then some of it is indigenous. But it was slavery wasn't always chattel slavery in other places. Right. You were a servant, but you still had rights. You still had weekends off. You still have a family, buy your own freedom, all kind of stuff that not like it went on in the West. But we're everywhere. Like I remember going to Paris in like 2007 and hanging out near the Eiffel Tower. We were waiting on our chance to go up and seeing the same kids I was seeing in New Orleans with like Coke bottle tops on their shoes, play tap dancing for a bucket full of money. And I'm like, this is the French Quarter. This is the same thing, you know, going to London and seeing, going through like not the red light district, but like the club area. I forget what it's called, and seeing hearing the same music, right? I'm like, they playing Kendrick over here, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's so much more that connects us. And if you trace it back, not even that far, we don't have to go back to like mitochondrial Eve in the Nile River and everything. We can go back to like the 1700s and you'll find a whole lot of common ancestors. Yeah. Like think about how many other countries y'all have just in y'all's bloodlines alone. I don't know mine, because like you said, my parents didn't talk about that beyond my grandmother's father's name. It's probably as far back as I can go myself. And that was in Louisiana. So I know I have Louisiana roots, but I grew up in Houston. And everybody is Black. That's all I know. You know? Yeah. So in conclusion, talk to your children, remind them where they come from, and let them be proud of it. Like, I love the way you said, like, your son, Jacob, was so proud of his family tree and everything. You know, when we talk about, especially what the world tries to do to the average person of African descent outside, even inside the continent of Africa, remind them, like Queen Ramonda said, tell them who you are. Remind them of who you are. And so all of these little stories, one, like the Hawaiian story, it gets left out of the Wikipedia and the books and everything and the history, because that's not putting the people who writing it in a good light. So keep this stuff alive, you know?
History is written by the winners, right?
Yes.
True. Which is why I was so happy when I got to college that my history requirement was literally whatever I wanted to take. And I got so tired of US and American history from middle and high school. I took African history for 4 semesters.
What'd you learn?
Oh, wow.
Nothing I can remember now.
That could be said for almost everything you learned.
I mean, because again, it was part of the requirements for my math major, so I needed the extra 2 semesters. But I remember one of my classes. It's like the first time in a long time I had a Black woman as a teacher, so that was a big deal. And we learned about a lot of how the coastal countries dealt with, you know, invasions from the Europeans. That was like a big thing, like, you know, throughout the centuries from 14th, 15th, 16th century, them coming down like, ooh, this is nice and different. They have resources. It's right up in there. And, you know, oftentimes being initially turned away with violence, because it's like, we said you can visit. We ain't say you could pillage.
Right. Right. Get off my yard. Matter of fact, just one more story. Y'all know who Mansa Musa is? Mansa Musa, and I hope I'm saying his name right, was the king of, I want to say, the Mali. You know what? Since I be telling lies, Google
you got
right
the whole
here.
internet on your phone.
Hang on. So Mansa Musa, 14th century, king of the Mali Empire from 1312 to 1337.
Now, where is that?
Mali is just north of Ghana, etc.
Oh, Mali, M-A-L-I. Okay. Mali.
Yeah, M-A-L-I. Yeah. So he was, if you correct for time and inflation, he still is the richest person to ever have lived.
Yep.
Wow.
Outside of Elon Musk and the rest of them, they never had as much money as he had, because their money is tied up in futures and stocks and promissories, and his was hard gold, which is why it was called the Gold Coast. So he was Muslim, and he made his pilgrimage to Mecca, and on the way from the basically northwest region of Africa all the way to the Middle East, he was just dropping gold everywhere he went. He was like, yo, for the people, what's up? Thanks for letting me spend the night here. What's up? how y'all doing? And he transformed economies across the land, to the point that some of the people, when he got to like, what we now would call UAE or the Arabian Peninsula, etc., they were like, could you not? Because you're messing up our local economy. Could you take this gold back with you? I mean, it's cute what you did. We appreciate it, but you're fucking up the money exchange here. So could you stop? And he's like, oh, my bad. So he actually came back and like brought some of it back. He took some of it back on the way back. Like, my bad. I didn't mean to mess up y'all's national economy with my pocket money.
My weekend spending.
Like, this was just my mad money.
My per diem.
Yeah, we leave you these elephants because I don't want to take them back.
These are the ones I took out for the weekend.
Exactly. This was just what was in the couch, So he gets back, and the rumors and the stories of this rich African king with all of this gold spread like wildfire, and it makes his way up to Portugal.
Oh boy.
And the Portuguese is like, what? Gold. Which is why the region that is now known as Ghana got the name Gold Coast, right? Because of that. And it also sparked their interest in Africa for its resources. And then it was, I don't remember this guy's name, but it was one high yellow African from North, like Morocco area, whatever. I can't remember his name. But if you read Ibram Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning, he talks about this guy who basically, how some people be talking trash about other folks just to get clout. Mm-hmm. That was him. He was clout chasing in Spain and Portugal and telling them how, all people like below the Sahara, they a bunch of hooligans and savages, and they all dark skinned and they stank and whatever. They stupid, whatever. It's all good. We're good. They're dumb. They're dumb. All they do is like manual labor. They don't know. They live in a little grass huts or whatever. It's whack. And they're like, really? So they're dumb, huh? And then where that gold was? Yes, it's where the gold. Oh, let's go down there. Mm-hmm. And so in a roundabout way, the pilgrimage of Mansa Musa and this one jackass in Northern Africa led the Portuguese to come down to the west coast of Africa and investigate the possibility of forced labor, which led to what we call the transatlantic slave trade. Which is why that's why your mom said, why they so nosy? Because the minute you let other people know about your business, they don't want to come and take all your money, take your land or whatever.
Generational.
Right.
It's funny. Portugal's one of the European countries, and I haven't been to too many, but one of the European countries I felt okay. Because the funny part is, even though they started a lot of that, they were one of the first to let it go.
This is wrong. We shouldn't do this. Yeah.
And now, which was so funny. And I love that I had this perspective when I went by myself 2 years ago, and I'm going back again because I love it there. But I went through Lisbon and down to the Algarve and then back to Lisbon just for like a night. And everywhere I went, except for maybe one part of the Algarve, I always saw someone that looked like me. And I always assumed, just out of ignorance, that they were all traveling, and every single one was from there, Portuguese, straight up Portuguese.
I heard Porto. I think there's a city that's like
Porto is the biggest port, and you probably find the most of us there. But even in Lisbon, I sat in the lobby of my hotel, like literally with my mouth open, just looking out the window. Like every fourth person was Black, and it wasn't looking like disheveled student. It wasn't looking like tourists with like their phone out. It was like, I'm on my way to work. Me and my girls are going to the cafe, the front desk manager, the DJ in the lobby. It was like, we were all over. And I was like, I just felt good. The bad side was that in conversation with everybody being okay with me, everybody's got to have a problem with somebody, and who they were all having an issue with were the Asians, the Indians, people from India. So anytime I got in a ride, some driver was going to tell me that I need to be safe because I'm alone, because you got to make sure you get in a car and that the driver's from here because all the Indian people are moving here and they have illegal cars and they're robbing people. And I was like, you guys can't just let the xenophobia, like nowhere is great, right? There's still got to be someone everybody has to rally.
Yeah, everybody needs a big man.
Just knock down. I was like, and as much as I felt great there, I'm like, man, that's not how somebody from Asia would feel coming here right now.
Yeah.
No.
That's a really good point. I remember seeing, I went to Iceland, had a great time. This was like 2016, maybe 2017, I forget. But I went to Iceland with a bunch of Black friends, and we were a little bit of an anomaly. They were like, oh, hello, welcome. You clearly ain't from here. But they had an Muslim population. And they had invited, similar to a lot of spaces that lack the numbers for manual labor, they invited people to come there for labor jobs once upon a time. And then once the labor was done, they were like, you dirty whatever they were, now need to get out and leave and taking our jobs. And it sounded they even had a guy in a protest about all these foreigners coming in with no shirt on and horns on his head and something painted across his chest. And I was like, that looks like the dude that stormed the Capitol in the United States.
Maybe that's their like baseline. They got to have one of those guys everywhere.
Got to have horns, which is funny because a lot of them think they're doing some like Nordic homage, and the Vikings would be like, we don't even rock with y'all like that. The Vikings was like, that I'm not with them. We used to bathe. I don't know what they doing. It's a true story. When the Vikings like started invading the what is it called?
What, the British Isles?
Anglo-Saxons, like the Saxons and all that.
Yeah.
They got angry because the Saxon women were like, he smells good and his hair is combed. I think I want to have children with him. And they were leaving or naturally gravitating to these Vikings who were just really, it was a lot less good rape than you would think, because the women were like, he looks nice and
he smells good.
He smells good. He takes a bath like at least once a week.
And I bet she didn't. But sorry, I'll just leave that.
That part. Like, we'll do a different show. If you're welcome to come back if you want to talk about. We'll do a show on hygiene, the history of hygiene.
Lord.
But what about when I shave my legs? My legs aren't clean because I use the shaving cream. It's not. Oh, okay.
No. Oh, how about this? In Great Britain, in Europe, I'm not gonna say Great Britain because it could have been somewhere else, but in Europe, rotten teeth was a sign of affluence because that meant you could afford sugar. And so you out here with the yuck mouth, and people are like, "Ooh, you got money because your teeth suck."
Yep.
And in most indigenous areas, you don't, like, if you see the skeletons of people before the invaders arrived versus while they're there or after, the dentistry is completely different. They didn't have tooth decay and cavities and teeth problems like that until they started getting food from Great Britain. Poison.
I like my sweets.
Go with some sugar cane.
Right? Sugar cane, fruit. Fruit is a dessert in a lot of other countries, as opposed to the pancakes and syrup we eat for breakfast. Most countries don't have breakfast food like we do.
Frosted flakes.
That's why we fat. That and wheat flour. Semolina flour, rice flour, a whole lot of other starches don't give you like gluten problems and digestive problems like wheat flour, but we steady rocking with Wheaties. Anyway, that's a different show. We're going to do that a different day. We're going to do the history of hygiene or the history of food or something. That would be really cool.
Both.
Yes. But for now,
I have someone I could get you. Elena is a food scientist. That would be great. She could break it all down for you. Never eat again.
You know what?
Yeah.
Talk to her. Tell her if she wants to come hang out with us and cut up for an hour and a half. She can come hang out with us on the show.
Most certainly.
But first off, I really want to thank you for coming through, Shalene. So you're just the best.
Having me. This is fun.
I'm glad you had fun. But I do want to say, you mentioned your travel agency and you mentioned like your travel. Tell us about your travel agency before you go.
Okay. So I started a travel agency in 2014, right before I had my son, and it's called Latitude Concierge Travels. And at first we only specialized in destination weddings and Caribbean travel. I picked a niche like everybody tells you to do. And then I realized as my clientele grew and they started asking for things like golf, and they started asking for Europe, and they started asking for river cruises, that I needed to get right and change the focus. We focus a lot on the Caribbean. That's a easy sell, but we are now working on weddings in Greece, weddings in Portugal, weddings in Italy. work on tours across Europe, some in Asia, started selling a lot more South Africa, and we're trying to sell more of West Africa because it kind of hurts my soul that we sell the East and we want people to go on safaris, but we forget that there's Ghana and Lagos and all the other stuff where we're prospering that we don't get to see. So we do a lot of that. And then just recently, which is why I actually look like I have some kind of sense, I just started a podcast. So our podcast is called Passports and Promises. And the intent is to educate and talk to clients that we've had so that we can tell new clients about booking groups and weddings and what it's like and the pain and pressure points and then the fun stuff, because everybody else is just talking to resorts. And I'm like, well, who wants to just hear about, the manager's perspective of their property? What about what it was really like to go there, to get married there, to bring all your friends there? How did your family feel? And the first episode is actually my kids talking about their time at Beaches, Turks, and Caicos. Like they literally are the interviewees, talking about their perspective as an 8 and a 10-year-old running through a resort for a week. So we just started that. The next few episodes will be some of our clients. And I really wanted to bring like our Google reviews to life. Like people go on there and say, it was so great working with you and our wedding was great, but tell people why so that they can make decisions about how they should look towards planning, the next adventure they want to take with their friends.
Cool. I love that idea. Awesome. I love that. And and then like some of the tours that you mentioned, like you said, you don't have to be getting married to decide you want to go to Portugal and do a or do, like you said, the Afro-Caribbean tours or whatever. That could be cool. Yeah.
Now, the cool thing about COVID was a lot of tour operators and a lot of just business owners were able to solidify their businesses and say, like, I do Afro tours in X city. I do, special immersion trips in this city. And, really got to see a spotlight of where we are. I mean, there's tons of us all over the world. Like things pop up in Thailand and Fiji and, it was a good time to see what else was out there so we could let people know what they could do.
If you ever get a lead in Korea, in South Korea, let me know. Because, me and my girls steady watching K-dramas and I'm on Duolingo thinking that I can speak Korean when I only know like 11 words. I have like basic sentences, please give me some water.
That's an important sentence. But thanks again for having me. This is fun. This is really fun.
I'm glad you had fun. And you said your website is your podcast is Passports and Promises.
Passports and Promises. So it's on Spotify. It's on Amazon. Apple's giving us grief, but it'll be there in like a week. Okay. And then there's a bunch of other ones that I don't know about, but those are the big ones, right? The ones most of us do listen to podcasts on. And if you go to Passports and Promises podcast, you can see the first episode in the blog. And then the next few episodes will be coming out beginning of June.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome sauce. So thank you for having us. James, I know that I monopolized the conversation tonight, but glad you're here as well. And for the folks that were watching or that catch this on a rerun, remember, Captain James Cook could not swim, and that's why he died.
That is the big takeaway. And James's great grandfather.
Yes, James Gregory stowaway on a boat.
Twice landed, once immigrated.
Yes.
He's a true American.
Right? So
I mean, only telling the story is how my grandmother related to me. So that's the oral history that was passed down about him.
Right. So. And that's why it's important. Got to keep that oral history alive. Yeah.
So. All right. So let me make sure my kids are in bed.
Yes. Go make sure your kids are in bed. James closes out, and we will see y'all next month on This Story.
Good night, everybody.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. The work of all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. The work of all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. We